Oh!
Wait, Dad, I resurrected you for Halloween.
Oh, it's Halloween already? Well, in that case, hello there everyone, happy Halloween. And I'm so glad you returned for the big night, because tonight, Doughboy420 and I have a very special story for you. So carve those jack-o'-lanterns, prepare those bowls of candy, and get ready for a Sanguine Samhain at Locust Lake. The halls of the school were decorated with construction paper bats and pumpkins. Outside, the leaves had turned a wide array of colors and had mostly fallen to the ground, leaving barren branches behind. The seniors were all abustle at their lockers as the day wrapped up. Everyone began making their way to the parking lot to find their cars or the school buses.
What are you doing for tonight?
Asa, a young man with spiky blonde hair and blue eyes, asked, catching Silas, a darker-skinned boy, as he just came out the front doors of the school. I don't know. Probably going to sit home and watch some horror movies and hand out candy, Silas answered, holding his backpack slung over one shoulder.
Screw that. I'm going to a party. You want in?
Asa suggested. Where at? Last time I went with you to a party, we ended up at that dickhead Jack's house out in the boonies, and then my car wouldn't start when I went to leave. Silas explained the story of the terrible night that was spent a year or two prior.
It's, my cousin's house. Think you could give me a ride?
Asa replied with a question. Sure, I guess. When should I pick you up? Silas agreed.
7. Make sure to wear a costume.
Asa replied, insisting that Silas enjoy the holiday. Later that evening, Silas pulled up to Asa's house a few miles from the school, and when Asa saw his costume, he burst into laughter.
That's your costume?
Asa asked between laughs, pointing to the young man wrapped head to toe in toilet paper. What? This was the best I could do at the last minute, Silas growled.
What are you, a toilet mummy?
Asa joked. What are you, a pile of shit? Silas jabbed back.
I'm an ice cream cone. I'm going to see if Trinity wants to have a lick.
He joked with a wink. She's lactose intolerant, so good luck with that. Come on, get in, Silas said, inviting his friend to have a seat. Silas headed north as instructed by Asa, and after a little bit of time, Silas turned down the radio and asked where they were headed.
You know how I said we were going to my cousin's place?
Asa asked, confessing that he kind of lied. Oh, God. We're going to Jack's house, aren't we? Silas growled in disgust.
We're going to Jack's house.
Asa replied with a reluctant nod. God damn it, Asa. I'm dropping you off and leaving, Silas insisted.
Come on, man. You're my only ride home, and besides, I heard Trisha Miller's gonna be there.
Asa begged and tempted his friend, knowing that he had a crush on the girl. All right, fine. But if he starts any shit like last time, I'm out and you can walk, Silas agreed, with a caveat. The two of them pulled up along the road at Jack's house. He lived in the middle of nowhere. Most of his neighbors had moved away over the years due to paranoia and fear. After all, they did live within a mile of Locust Lake, a place where dozens, if not hundreds of people had disappeared or wound up dead. So, who could blame them? Luckily, they weren't going to the lake. They'd been there a few times during the day, but never dared to venture there at night. Jack's house was 2 stories, and at over 100 years old, it had some creaks and cracks. but the place was sturdy and it was huge. A great place to have a party while his parents are out of town. Silas and Asa heard the music before they even got out of the car. It was so loud that there was a note on the door welcoming guests to enter.
Asa,
Jack yelled as soon as he entered. The guy with bright red-dyed hair that matched his suit then approached him, joking that Asa had brought some toilet paper with him and that they were running low. Silas looked at Asa, who silently mouthed sorry in response.
I'm just playing, man. Here, have a beer.
Jack said, handing Silas an open can from a cooler nearby. The music was loud as a live concert, and there were dozens of people, all of them having a blast, dancing, drinking, and ingesting various chemicals. The party was pumping. A guy dressed as a marijuana leaf did a keg stand, while friends dressed as a lighter and a water bong held him up. Sally Cole came out of the bathroom with her boyfriend, Shane, in tow behind her. She was dressed as a cop, and he was her pinstripe prisoner, both of them sniffing, giggling, and wiping their noses. Several people, both in costume and regular clothes, danced the night away, arms raised in the air and hips swaying to the beat.
Oh my god.
A girl dressed as a cat stumbled out of the crowd.
Let's dance.
Trinity said through slurred words.
Told you she wanted some ice cream.
Asa joked before being pulled off to the dance floor by Trinity.
Hi, Si.
A girl calmly said, approaching Silas from behind immediately. He knew who it was, and instantly he melted in her words. Hi, Trisha, he said, with a twitter-pated sigh, turning to find the girl of his dreams, dressed as a football player, complete with helmet.
We're playing beer pong, and I need a partner. Wanna play?
She requested. Yes, he immediately agreed, barely giving her time to finish speaking. He didn't need to be asked twice about being her partner. The two of them took their place at the opposite end of the table from Wayland and Margot, the party couple of the school who were dressed as the stereotypical pimp and prostitute. Large feathered hat, purple tiger striped suit, tiny tube top, fishnets, thigh-high boots, the whole nine. You're going down, Margot said with a competitive smile.
You will be later.
Wayland cracked wise to his girlfriend, Margot, who gave him a quick wink in return.
Me and Silas are gonna kick your butt.
Trisha talked smack as well, giving Silas a smile. Margot went first, immediately sinking a ball into a central cup, and Trisha was the first to drink. Wayland stepped up and tossed it. It entered a side cup without even touching the rim. This isn't looking good, Silas said, unsure of what he had gotten himself into.
Bring it back,
Wayland then said, requesting the balls be returned since they both made their shots. Margot went again, and again she sunk the ball into the cup, causing Trisha to have to drink it down. Wayland stepped up to shoot again, but fumbled the shot when he was startled by the guy dressed as a lighter bursting through the door screaming. It was Wayland's brother, Dakota, and he was in a panic. "Cops!" he shouted, even louder than the music. "Everybody scatter!" he added, before once again disappearing out the door. Everyone ran, screaming out of the house and into the forest, or took off down the road as fast as they could, while several police vehicles pulled up to arrest any delinquent teenagers. The cops managed to catch a few people, but due to the quick warnings of Dakota, mostly everyone escaped the clutches of the law. Margot and Wayland had run into the woods behind Jack's house, and the two of them ran and ran through the forest until they felt like they were far enough away from the cops. They could barely see the flashing lights of the police cars in the distance down the hill from where they had come.
God damn it, lost my hat.
Wayland growled. "Don't worry about that. We can go look for it tomorrow. Important thing is I think we're safe," Margot said with a sly smile of celebration. The two of them sat down upon a fallen tree to catch their breath. They'd just escaped from the scariest thing that they could think of, and now needed a much-deserved rest.
So, we're alone, you know?
Wayland suggested. "Really? Here? Now?" Margot growled in disgust at his indecent proposal.
Come on, babe. I mean, you did say you would.
Wayland coerced her. Fine. Margot relented before planting a wet kiss on her boyfriend's lips. Then, one on his cheek, then one on his ear. Then she softly licked down his neck, her lips trailing gently over his skin, sending goosebumps across it and chills up his spine as she moved lower, placing her hands firmly upon his hips as she moved downward. Wayland let out a pleasureful sigh and closed his eyes. Tilting his head back, he felt her hands gripping his thighs. His mind lost in the feelings at hand, he at first did not notice a third hand moving over his own and lock into his fingers, holding them down to the log where they sat, and then a fourth hand tightly gripped over the other wrist, keeping him firmly in place.
What the hell?
He said out loud in confusion. Then, from beneath them emerged a face, from the very folds of the bark of the tree that they sat upon, like the skull of a deer mounted upon wood. A gray, ragged cloth flowed from her body and blended into the log beneath them. Then the geomorphic apparition glared back into his eyes and simply snapped both of his wrists like twigs. Wayland screamed in pain, and Margot likewise screamed in fear, but both of them were swiftly brought to an end by the woman emerging from the very forestry. An earthen hand was driven into and through the neck of the screaming girl, nearly severing her head from her body, while the other hand grabbed a hold of Wayland's head from behind, yanking it backwards and breaking his spinal column, separating his skull from his neck, causing his vertebrae to nearly poke out from the skin where his head should have been.
Come on, this way.
Shane said, still donning his classic black and white striped prison suit as he pointed up to the unmarked dirt road.
Up there? No way, I'm not going up there,
Sally said, still in her police uniform.
Come on, no one ever goes up to that old camp, not even the police. Let's just hide out until the heat dies down and then we can figure out a way back home.
Sally turned back from where they had come from and could still see the flashing lights of the police cars illuminating the trees from around the bend. Then she looked up the hill into the darkness.
I sure hope you know what you're doing,
Sally insisted.
I do. Besides, I'm the prisoner. You have to follow me anyway.
Or I could just head back to the party and blend in with the rest of the cops. Leave your ass out here to fend for yourself,
Sally joked.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to see you try. Let me know how much your bail is.
Shane responded, and they both got a chuckle from it. With spirits high, the two headed up the dead-end dirt road toward the entrance to the campgrounds on Locust Lake. By the time they had reached the worn-out sign for Forest Trails State Park, the pair were well out of breath and needed to stop and take a rest. By now, the sounds of the police commotion had dissipated, replaced only by the sounds of crickets in the darkness.
Well, looks like we're here. At least the way back is downhill.
Shane joked.
Yeah, just give me a minute, okay?
Sally asked him before they walked up to the camp. Shane agreed and turned back down the road while Sally leaned up against the old sign to support her form. The enshadowed forest around them hid the dark figure standing behind her, short and unassuming. With its tiny wooden hand, it reached out and carefully took the cuffs off of Sally's belt that went with her costume. The lurking presence wasn't detected until Shane turned around just in time to see what he thought to be a small man or even a child slap the cuffs around Sally's right wrist and then the signpost itself. This shocked Sally into attention as well, but it was already too late. As the figure stepped out into the moonlight, Shane and Sally could now see that the thing was in fact a small, horribly burned wooden marionette, somehow animated into life. Sally shrieked, and Shane tried to as well, but his scream was cut short as a long, stick-like protrusion emanated from his mouth with a crunch, a deer antler having been impaled through the back of his head. As his form dropped, Sally could see the gray-robed, deer-skull-wearing being standing behind him, a bloody piece of antler still in its hand. The thing appeared to be female, but said no words to indicate its humanity. Sally pulled and yanked at her cuffs, screaming for help. but they were miles away from any kind of civilization now, and the only one to hear her screams would be the tall man in the patchwork mask that approached her from the camp road, plodding menacingly in her direction. Sally pleaded and begged, frantically trying to get free, but even breaking her wrist did absolutely nothing but cause her needless pain, because the man would simply walk right up to her and tear her head from her shoulders with his bare hands anyway. The trio of monsters stared down at their handiwork before heading back into the darkness from which they came. They had to prepare for the next set of trespassers on their unholy land. It wasn't too long after the road had fallen silent that footsteps could be heard scuffling up the gravel along its length, and in moments, 3 figures emerged from the darkness that led to the bottom of the road. 3 figures, all dressed in matching attire, as a bong, a lighter, and a pot leaf. Dakota, talking with his friend, lit a bowl of some actual weed with a real lighter, and then passed it to his pot leaf friend. You think anyone else may have come this way? The pot leaf friend asked his lighter companion, holding his hit.
I don't know. It's possible. This place is so big, abandoned, not far from where we all were, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Dakota replied as his friend coughed on his hit, passing the bowl to the bong.
Keep it down, though, will you? Dakota asked. There's no need to advertise our presence.
As the bong inhaled a large cloud of weed smoke, Dakota slowed his pace and approached the sign leading up to the lake.
Are you guys seeing this?
He asked, coaxing his friends to get closer and inspect for themselves. On the sign was a large red stain, and attached to the post, a bloody pair of handcuffs.
Yo, what the fuck is this shit?
The bong finally smoke up.
Local kids playing a prank, I'm sure. Come on, the camp's this way.
Dakota reassured them both, making his way up to the abandoned campgrounds, his friends in tow behind him. It wasn't long after they had reached the lake that the 3 of them decided to stretch out on the dock on the other side, being able to see incoming vehicles from a large distance away, giving them a chance to run if needed. But they wouldn't see any vehicles, and although they were engrossed in smoking yet another bowl underneath the stars near the gentle slap of water, it was not for their lack of focus. Instead, it was what approached them from behind, silently. Before any of them had a chance to know the danger was near, large black gloves reached out and gripped the kid wearing a pot leaf costume by the head and, from behind, yanked him backwards. Stunned and shocked, Dakota and his bong friend stood to their feet, astonished, with nowhere to run but into the water. An ethereal voice called out from the darkness, disembodied, without anything that they could see, telling someone named Jacob that it was a party and to get lit, causing them to turn their attention from the wooden masked man and instead to the ghastly woman in ratty business attire that had spoken the words. Her zombified and rotted appearance held her attention long enough for Jacob to pick up the limp body of the potleaf kid and forcibly stuff him into the front of the bong costume as if he were packing the bell piece. Dakota screamed, but Jacob only reached forward, gripped him tight by the shoulder with one hand, and stole the lighter from him with the other. It didn't take much for the plush, terry cloth-like costume of the lighter to go up in flames. Screams emanated from both Dakota and his friend in the bong costume as Jacob lifted the flaming lighter and used it to set the pot leaf and subsequently the bong costume on fire as well. With a kick from the opposite direction, the trio of them fell forward onto the lake shore, away from the water.
Seems those kids are real burnouts.
Dr. Clark chuckled, and once the flames had died out, they too disappeared back into the darkness of the forest from where they had come. It was an hour or so after the lake had gone silent once more when a straggling group of people emerged from the forest and onto the campgrounds. Asa, Silas, Trinity, Trish, and Jack all decided to forego the roads and make their way to the abandoned camp by trekking through the dark forest. The walk took them more than 3 times what it should have, but they were rewarded by having no chance of running into the police. From where they stood, crossing the field near the apple orchard, the lake looked serene and placid, bathed in gentle moonlight from above.
Hey, Trisha, watch it with that jersey, alright?
Jack said, asking Trisha to be careful with the clothing he lent to her for her football player costume.
You've been up my ass like an enema all night. Can you just leave me alone for 5 minutes?
She asked him in return.
Seems those two are having the night of their lives, huh?
Asa asked Trinity.
Yeah, something like that.
She laughed, and Asa smiled. Hey, there's some cabins over there. They look abandoned. Why don't we hold up there while the heat dies down? Silas asked the group.
Well, you can do what you want, but it seems like there's more than one cabin over there, and I think I'd like to spend some quality time alone with this one. See if I can get my shirt back.
Jack jested, pulling Trisha close to him.
Well, why don't you take that one over there, and we'll take the big one right there. Come find us when you're done.
Trinity suggested.
Yeah, see you in about 4 minutes.
Asa said under his breath.
What did you say?
Jack jumped at the comment, but Trisha pulled him back.
Come on, babe. Let's go get high and mess around.
She coaxed him. Jack decided to let Asa's comment slide and followed Trisha to the nearest small cabin near to the lake. Asa didn't say a word about it again until they too had reached their own cabin, which was surprisingly unlocked. And even then, his comment was brief, for as the 3 of them inspected the mostly barren interior, aside from a wooden table and 4 chairs, Asa got lost in conversation with Trinity, something he'd been hoping for all night, no matter the circumstances. Silas was beginning to feel like a third wheel, but was happy to be inside an inconspicuous hiding spot after the long trek through the woods. Meanwhile, Jack and Trisha had found their cabin as well, and Jack wasted no time in rolling a joint for he and Trisha to smoke. But before he could make any further moves, a knock at the door startled Jack and Trisha.
This better be fucking good.
Jack stammered, standing up and opening the door.
Who is it?
Trisha asked.
It's no one. What the hell?
Jack said in return, not understanding how and why someone would hide from sight so quickly.
I bet it's that.
Jack started, but was interrupted by the sound of a loud crashing noise behind him. Turning around, Jack was just in time to see a screaming Trisha being carried back out of a large hole in the wall where a huge man in a tan coat and stitchwork mask had broken through. Trisha screamed and pleaded, and still, Jack was frozen in terror, unable to move. It was when the beast had pulled her outside and held her aloft by the throat that Jack leapt into action. The football player lurched onto Trisha's attacker and hit him repeatedly over and over as hard as he could, but Casper didn't budge. Instead, he remained focused, shifted his posture to hold Trisha's head with both hands, and squeezed. Jack halted his assault as Casper turned his attention to him. Jack's screams carried far as he was torn limb from limb. But no one, besides those who would soon follow, would hear him.
Did you hear that?
Trinity stopped whispering into Asa's ear and asked.
Hear what?
Asa responded. No, I think I heard it too. It sounded like Jack and Trisha. Silas said.
Well, why don't you go check it out?
Why me? Asa stood up to offer his response in closer proximity to his friend.
Because she told me that she took a Lactaid and is in the mood to lick my cone. Now, be a good fucking wingman and go check it out for me, will ya?
Asa said, hushed so that Trinity couldn't hear much of it. Fine. You owe me, Silas said.
I don't owe you shit.
Asa responded with a smile as Silas turned and walked out of the cabin door. The night was quiet. Not even frogs sung their songs. The water of the lake still and also silent. Silas approached the cabin by the lake, but he wouldn't even reach its door. Outside, laying out front in the grass, were heaps of what looked like clothing and meat. Silas mostly recognized Trisha, even without her skull contorted and bloody, but the piles of meat and clothes confused his thoughts with horror momentarily, until he saw Jack's head laying in the high weeds near to a tree. Silas screamed out, but his voice was echoed as if something mimicked him, and even though he was terrified and running, he couldn't help but wonder how or why. That is, until he heard it again, and this time on its own, and that's when he realized it was not a scream that was meant to mimic his own. It just coincidentally occurred at the same time, and now the terrified screaming could be heard coming from the cabin where he had just left Asa and Trinity alone. When the large beast of a man in a wooden mask burst through the front door as if it were balsa wood and stared him down, Silas knew his friends had to already be dead. He would never learn how or see Jacob's handiwork with his own eyes. He didn't know that Jacob was in the closet of that cabin the whole time, waiting for the right time to strike those unsuspecting within. Silas wouldn't see their mutilated and discombobulated bodies, or the vast amount of blood upon every substrate. In fact, he wouldn't see much of Jacob after turning to run in the opposite direction either, as he ran headfirst into something small, rigid but plush and resolute, nearly knocking him over. Silas stared up at what now greeted him, the menacing smile of a pale Native American woman, her eyes red and glowing with menace, leaking blood onto a sorrowful expression, like tears. Silas knew it was Halloween, and had thought monsters weren't real, that it was all just make-believe. They all did. But now, looking into the eyes of this creature, knowing it would be the last thing that you would ever see, he knew how terribly wrong he was, how wrong they all were, how wrong the world was. Monsters do exist. You just won't know it until it's too late. Well, I want to thank you all for stopping in on this special Halloween night, and thank you too, my spawn, for resurrecting me for this great special occasion.
No problem. And this time I didn't die.
And I sure hope you tune back in again next year, because it's going to be a very bloody and fun ride. Happy Halloween. Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.